And I believe we are live. Welcome to this week's Optimizing Success show. And I am so excited. I'm Dr. Susan Birne-Stone, and I will be your guest host tonight because guess who is in the guest seat? It is none other than the creator and host of Optimizing Your Success, Dr. Ruth Gotian. And I'm just so excited to be here with a group of unbelievable panelists. And so what we're going to do tonight, we're going to start with, I'm going to introduce the panelists, then I'm going to introduce Ruth, who you all know, and then we're going to get started and talk about her new book. So let me start with introducing our panelists who are also, several of them are also in her book. So we have joining us live tonight. This is the woman who's usually behind the camera doing all of the tech work. Dr. Debbie Heiser, welcome. You all get to see her this evening. And Debbie is the CEO and co-founder of the Mentor Project, which actually hosts this show every single week. And she is a mentor herself to so many of us. And I'm excited and honored to announce that today, hot off the press, Debbie was selected as one of the 30 people worldwide to be named to the Thinkers 50 radar list, top global management thinkers to watch. This is a
Woohoo!
accomplishment, and just great congratulations goes out to Debbie. And I know that Ruth will have Debbie on as a guest, so you'll be able to hear more about this in future shows. So again, congratulations and welcome live, Debbie. And next we have Janice Lintz. Janice is the #1 change maker with a special passion to help millions of people worldwide with hearing loss. She's also one of the most organized and well-traveled people I know. We also have Susie Katz. Susie is an award-winning photographer and founder of PhotoWings, an incredible organization which helps people think creatively through photography. We are so lucky to have on tonight Tina Parker. Tina is an unbelievable coach, speaker, and the CMO of the Mentor Project, also the CPO for Platform One, and is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. Whoa. Okay. And next we have Dr. Bruce Wiley. Bruce is a writer, a journalist, a professor, a systems modeler, computational and digital health expert. And he also gets the prize for the most unique virtual backgrounds. So if you've been tuning in, you will know that we never know what he's going to have on in his background. And now I am so honored to introduce the one, the only, again, the creator of this show, Optimize Your Success, that is sponsored through the Mentor Project, Ruth Gotian.
Hello.
Welcome. And let me give a little bio of Ruth. Dr. Ruth Gotian is the Chief Learning Officer and Assistant Professor of Education in Anesthesiology and former Assistant Dean of Mentoring and the Executive Director of the Mentoring Academy at Weill Cornell Medicine. She has been hailed by the journal Nature and Columbia University as an expert in mentorship and leadership development. In 2021, she was selected as one of the 30 people worldwide to be named to the Thinkers Radar list, dubbed the Oscars of Management dubbed the Oscars of Management Thinking. Recently, Ruth won the Thinkers 50 Distinguished Achievement Radar Award, given to a, quote, thinker with the potential to change the world of theory and practice, and cemented her place on the #1 emerging management thinker in the world. And you're going to see why in a little bit. She is also a semifinalist for Forbes 50 over 50 list. In addition to publishing in academic journals, she is a contributor to Forbes and Psychology Today, where she writes about optimizing success. Her research about the mindset and skill set of peak performers, including Nobel Prize winners, astronauts, Olympic champions, and others. And we are all here tonight to discuss her book, The Success Factor, Developing the Mindset and Skill Set for Peak Business Performance, which is now available and has already made the Amazon new release bestseller list.
I feel like I should have a tiara on.
You should have a tiara on, Ruth. This is, and just, I realize I never introduce myself, but I will. I'm Dr. Susan Birne-Stone, your guest host tonight. I'm a coach, a psychotherapist, a television talk show host and producer, and many other things. And what I really am tonight is just so grateful to be here. So thank you so much. And I did read the book in a way that Ruth suggests not to. So I did the not to thing. I read it practically in one sitting. And what I am going to do, what I can honestly say I'm going to do, because I'm going to have my hard copy arrives tomorrow, I checked. I am going to have to not only reread it, but go through it. Because this book is really, it just exceeded my expectation. I know Ruth for almost 2 years now. And I feel like I was actually in the room when she was talking. Now, she's been researching this book for years, but I was in a special room where she and Sam Horn talked about actually just going with it and getting it done. And here we are about a year and a half later, and it is done, and it is amazing. So what I'd like to do is the way we're going to work tonight is I'm just going to start with asking you a few questions. And then I want to give each of the panelists the opportunity to ask questions as well as the audience. So all of you watching, you have a chance to ask Ruth any question you want, please. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on lots of different platforms. Just please put it in and we will take your questions at the end or even throughout. So I'm just so excited. Ruth, I know you were a little bit nervous. Take a deep breath.
Terrified, Susan. Terrified.
It's good. As Tina said earlier on a post, she said, you're doing the right thing and on the right journey because your anxiety is in a good place. So it's really good. So breathe and let's get this show on the road. I'm going to start, Ruth, at the very beginning. And I want to read something from your book and then ask you a question to start us off. So I'm quoting the book. And this is how it's going to start in terms of what defines a high achiever. Growing up, I never thought of myself as a high achiever. High achiever was a term applied to other people, Olympic athletes, astronaut, award-winning writers, global figures, among others at the top of their field. In my mind, they had traits and characteristics that were distinct, because they were extraordinary. They had different trainings and advanced pedigrees that allowed them to be perceived as all-knowing. As a result, they could achieve accolades that were utterly unattainable to the average person. In short, I was mesmerized by high achievers, but I was also very wrong. As I grew older, I realized that high achievers are no different than the rest of us, in that they have challenges, opportunities, fears, and stressors, and they work hard, really hard, to overcome them. But what they do that is different and what can be learned is their mindset, their motivation, and their approach, the how. High achievers have found something they're really good at and have invested their energy into studying, perfecting and refining it to the best of their ability. They are intrinsically motivated and passionate about pursuing this dream, driven by their own desire and curiosity, not an external judgment such as a diploma, a promotion, or award. So, Ruth.
It sounds so much better when you read it than when I hear it in my mind.
Well, now, everybody's running out to get this book, and we'll talk about you can get it anywhere, but we'll talk about that at the end. So hearing that, Ruth Gotian, Dr. Ruth Gotian.
Dr. Susan Birne-Stone.
Do you feel like you are a high achiever?
No way.
Oh, look at you.
No way.
It's so interesting that, and as I'm going to repeat what you say, right? That just proves that you're a high achiever. Because if I know that when you've interviewed every one of your high achievers and you ask them, do you feel like a high achiever? They all said no. No matter
Okay.
how many accolades they received, how many prizes, they all said no.
Okay.
But really you are, and I'm not going to read it, but I just want to also acknowledge, because for me at the beginning of your book, you also speak to what really high achievement means, and you define both high achieving and success, and you talk a little about the controversy and how difficult it is, and I really want to just underscore this, because you are a high achiever and you are very successful, and you don't have a Nobel Prize. And I think that is so important, because what I loved about this book is that what you're saying is that these things, anybody can be a high achiever in whatever they decide and identify they want to be a high achiever in.
That's
And
right.
so I want to underscore that, because that is so important. And so Ruth, what was the first question I'm really going to ask? The second question is, what was surprising that you learned in interviewing all of the people that you did? Because I
I
know
think
go ahead.
there were really a lot of surprises that came out, but one of the first things I realized was that success is a moving target. And I think that has something to do with the fact why none of the high achievers see themselves as a high achiever, because there's always more to be done. There's always another goal. There's always another aspiration. But that's what keeps them so good, is that they're always looking out onto the horizon. And I think understanding that it's a moving target, and understanding that they have the wherewithal to work toward that next goal, I think that surprised me. The other thing that surprised me was, and this is what made me realize that it was never about the medal. It was never about that extrinsic motivation, because I would ask all of the Olympians and the NBA stars, "Can and the football stars, can you show me your medals?" And they don't have them on display, which I thought was odd. I thought they would have a trophy room. And they said to me, it was never about the medal. You see, a lot of them had, when I asked to see their medals, they would have it in a box under the bed. They would have it in a safe. One of them has it in a basement in his mother's house. Another one had it in a brown paper bag in his sock drawer. Another one had it in his nightstand, because they said it was never about the medal. That's a chapter in their lives, not their entire story. That's why they also didn't quit after they got the medal. That really surprised me, but it was something that I heard universally over and over again.
And you did mention some of those examples in the book, which is great, and people can read about those. And what's so interesting, and I don't know, because the idea of success has always been something that I've been talking to people about and passionate about. And I think what's so important, and I wonder if you found this in your interviews, and I really want to know, because I know people are going to read the book, they're going to know, they're going to get to see everything that you wrote about. But what they're not going to get to hear is about you and your journey. And it's so important, to just take a moment when I, asked you, so do you feel like a high achiever? But, to take a moment to also feel successful, and then also create the next level and the next goal, as you were talking about. So did you find that they experienced that moment, at least a moment of where it's like, okay, acknowledging that they were successful? Or do you think people really struggled with doing that?
I think they did, but they put it very much into perspective. And I think they were always working on the next goal shortly thereafter. And that's why they didn't crumble after they won their big achievement. None of the Nobel Prize winners quit doing science after they won the Nobel. Yeah, they were basking in the joy of it, but before long, they were right back to work. The Olympians went right back to training for the world championships. So I think that was really all part of it. They got to understand it, they got to feel it, they used it as a platform, and that was probably one of the most important things. They used their big success as a platform to help other people. That's why when I talk about success, I don't talk about people who are famous. I don't talk about the reality stars. I'm talking about people who change the way we think about things, the way we do things, the way we process things. Those are the people who are successful. They created a paradigm shift in the way we think, process, do things. They're recognized for their work, and also they lift other people up as they start moving up. And that was really one of the three defining features.
That's great. Now I know there's some questions coming in. So Debbie, did you want to ask? Let's start with you. Do you want to ask Ruth a question? I know you had a question.
I would. And Ruth, the book is amazing. I have a background on, so it doesn't really show, but I have it right here, and it's awesome. And my question, though, for you is, you've looked at so many high achievers. Which, if any, high achiever story surprised you the most when you were first hearing it?
I think the one that surprised me the most, so much that I really enjoyed it. And wait a minute, before we get to that, I want to congratulate Debbie Heiser on getting the Thinkers 50 Radar Award, because that is huge. That is huge. And Debbie is one of the people, Dr. Debbie Heiser is one of the people in the book.
Oh, Ruth, don't give it away. Don't give it away. We just wanted it. Well, people
find
okay.
Out. Okay, my favorite story.
To find out who here is in the book.
Forget I said anything.
Okay.
I still want to congratulate Debbie on the Thinkers 50 Radar list.
Thank
you. My most favorite story, or the one that surprised me the most, was Apollo Anton Ono, who's going to be a guest on our show in a few weeks. Apollo Anton Ono he's the most decorated Winter Olympian. I think he won 8 medals. Raised by a single father. At the age of 14, he went over to Lake Placid to train. And he didn't get to go to his prom or high school graduation because he was constantly training. Now, I grew up watching Apollo Anton Ono at the Olympics. He had this big bandana always, and this little, I don't even know what you'd call it, right? Not quite a goatee. And a lot of people know him now from the Mirrorball champion on Dancing with the Stars. But here is this fierce competitor. And we didn't just talk about his sport. We talked about everything else. I really felt that I was talking to a colleague, because he understood adult learning. He understood positive psychology. He understood everything he would need for high performance. He wasn't just working out on the ice. He did everything he needed to do off the ice. And it wasn't just the weight room and the track and things like that. It was all of these other things. And he was extremely well read. And the fact that we could have those discussions was, to me, absolutely thrilling. It was not what I expected at all. I loved it.
Oh, thanks. That was great. I didn't expect that answer.
He'll be on the show in a few weeks.
I'm excited. I can't wait. What a story.
Thank you.
Tina, I know you have a few questions for Ruth.
I do. And I'm so excited to get my book. It's been on order for probably 2 months at this point. So it's on its way.
Thank you.
But so I'm going to read the book, so I'll know what's in it. But I want to know about your story and what the journey looks like for you, getting to the point where you decided, this is what I want to bring to the world.
It almost didn't happen. I have always been obsessed with success. I live in New York City. I would go to Broadway shows, and I was always more interested in what was behind the scenes than what was on stage. I was always, looking like that. And I used to run what's called an MD PhD program, where the students get the dual degree, both an MD and a PhD simultaneously, and they do it in 7 to 8 years. This program has a 3.5% acceptance rate. You have a better chance of getting into Stanford than you have of getting into this program. Super competitive. And even amongst this program, there were people who would rise to the top. But nationally, we were having this problem where people were training so hard and working so hard toward this goal, and they would leave the profession. It was something that we called the leaky pipeline. There were books written about it, articles written about it, and every national conference we had, there were multiple sessions about this. And I participated in that because it was a real problem. We needed these physician scientists. But I was more interested in the other end of the spectrum, those who were so incredible. Their work was so impactful. I thought, what if we could make more of those people? Because those would more than make up for anyone who would leave the profession. So at the age of 43, while working full time and raising my family, I went back to school, got my doctorate, decided to study this. I studied the most successful physician scientists of our generation. And since then, I have studied other extreme high achievers because I wanted to know if what I found in physician scientists would also hold true with other successful people. So then I started with the astronauts and the Olympians. And that's when I realized that a Nobel Prize winning scientist is identical to the Olympic champion figure skater. And if that's the case, I realized that success is a learnable skill. And if it can be learned, I'm an adult educator, I can teach it. So I started writing about it and writing articles and stuff. And then in March 2020, my dad was in the hospital and I was sitting with him at the hospital for endless days, nights, hours. And every day as I was sitting on my computer, he asked me, are you getting any ideas for your next book? And that was honestly the furthest thing from my mind. And when he passed away in August 2020, shortly thereafter, a publisher reached out to me. I didn't know that this publisher was following my work and talked to me about writing a book. And I felt it was a nudge from my dad. So that's why the book is dedicated to my dad. And 17 months after his funeral, the book is being published to the day. So that's the story.
Wow, that is unbelievable, Ruth. Really, really unbelievable. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
Thank you. You guys saw me every week, every week going through it.
We did. We did. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Tina, did you want to ask a follow-up question before I move on to Susie?
Yeah, actually I did, because I mean, that story is just so touching, and it's clear that this is your calling, but it's not clear that you knew all of these people before this happened. So how did you get connected with all of these amazing people?
Oh, my favorite story. I just have to interrupt. In case you didn't hear it last week, the best one was the plane story. I think you should. I mean, I'm sure there's others too, but that was just such a great story. You have to hear this one. So Ruth, tell that one, and then you can tell another one too.
The plane story is he actually didn't. The book was done at that point. That was the guest Tal Arel, who we had a couple of weeks ago, who was coming back from the Olympics, and he was wearing the Olympic gear. And I saw his name tag hanging out of his book bag. That's, I think, was the hint to me that he's an Olympian. And I actually approached him on the plane. And we had the interview on the plane for some articles. But you're right. I don't usually have in my contact list Nobel Prize winners, astronauts, and Olympians. But what happened was, because of where I worked, I actually knew a lot of Nobel Prize winners because they were part of the faculty of where I worked, and at all the national meetings, I would see them. So that was not a problem. And I knew that when people know, like, and trust you, they are willing to talk to you. And I was at a conference and I met a couple of astronauts and I asked to talk to them. And we had some great discussions. And then they introduced me to a few others. And then I met an Olympian. And I also asked everybody who I knew, I said, I need to interview people in more industries. Does anyone know people in, for example, the creative arts? And that's how I got introduced to a Tony Award winner and a Tony Award winning producer. So it was really using the people who I know who introduced me. And I think people were willing to talk to me because I would say to them repeatedly, I am not interested in what I can Google about you. We don't need to have this conversation. I'm more interested in what it took to get there. that, because what you can Google is the tip of the iceberg. I want to know what's below the waterline. And every time when I finished an interview, they would introduce me to somebody else. And that's how I got to meet people like Steve Kerr, the 8-time NBA champion, and some of the other Olympians. Devin Harris, who's usually here, introduced me to a bunch of people. So, if every friend tells a few more friends and you start having friends in those circles, and people know, like, and trust you, they're willing to talk to you. So it helped. And now many of them are really good friends, which is nice.
That is great. That is a great story. Susie, I know that you really have a question that you are just so want to ask Ruth.
Okay, hi, I'm thrilled for your moment here. We've been working with you and hugging you throughout this. I know it's not an easy process.
Thank you,
So
Susie.
I do a lot of interviewing, and I know that it's really, really hard to get people to open up to you. First of all, to go and ask them if they would consider, and then to get them to really open up. And how are you able to do that? And another question that I have is, from all the interviews you've done, which advice would you have given to your younger self?
Okay. So the first one is about, I'm going to forget the second question, so you're going to have to remind me. So the first question is, how did I get them to open up? So I'm a social scientist and I do a lot of qualitative research. So doing these kinds of interviews is our bread and butter, is getting people to open up and be their authentic selves and share things. And we are really trained in how to ask people to go deeper into their story. And slowly but surely, we start peeling off the layers one at a time. And as a result, we get people to tell the story, and we show them that we don't have any ill intent when we ask these types of questions. And knowing how to do that, it took a lot of training, but it definitely, the qualitative research training has definitely helped. That's how I approach this whole project. This is all heavily research based. The whole book is research based. So that's how I got them to open up, and it worked. It worked. So that was the first question. Did I answer that well?
Yeah, I'm curious. At the very beginning, people tend to get nervous, and how do you loosen them up so that they're comfortable? And also, how did you get the nerve to approach them for your book? And then I'll get to the second one.
Okay. So getting them to open up. Well, first, look, you go to any meeting, when you start with business, nobody's going to participate. It's as if you're in any corporate boardroom, any meeting at work. You have to start with the small talk before you ever get to the meat and potatoes of the discussion. So knowing how to have that small talk is critical. And you guys know me, I'm an extrovert, 95%. I've been tested. So talking to people and making small talk is not a problem for me. That part was easy. What was the second half of the question? I told you I'd forget.
Okay, well, the second part is, from all the interviews that you've done, which advice would you pull out from them and give to your younger self, if you could?
So there's actually two pieces of advice. One was actually given to me by my mentor, Dr. Bert Shapiro, who was on the show about a year ago. And it was repeated to me by Dr. Tony Fauci when I interviewed him. And they said to me, do something important, not just interesting. Because if it's interesting, it's a hobby and it's interesting to you. But if it's important, it'll have an impact and it'll have a ripple effect and it'll be bigger than you will ever be. So I think that was the first piece of advice that they gave to me, which I wish I would have known years earlier. The other thing is something that came across with all of the high achievers is that they fear not trying more than they fear failing. So we know a lot of people who are afraid of failing. We know a lot of people who are afraid of succeeding, but this group fears not trying more than they fear failing. If I would have known that years ago, I would have saved a lot of time, a lot of heartache, a lot of energy. But once you fear not trying, you might actually, get a book out of it.
Ruth,
I was terrified, but
Well-
you have to fear not trying.
those are some of the quotes that actually I wrote down because I highlighted those, and I can't wait to get my hard copy book so that I can actually highlight them in. But that was so important because it reminds me of when you ask somebody what are they going to regret if they don't do at their, when they're at their end.
Yeah.
So that was a great question. Before we go to our next panelist, I want to take a question from our viewing audience. And Nancy Morin Malson asked, you shared that success is a moving target. What new goal have you set for yourself? I love that, Nancy.
Hey, Nancy. Nancy had my job at the University of Maryland. There were a few of us who ran MD, PhD programs. And while our programs were competitors, we were actually very, very good friends. So she's known me for well over 20 years. Hey, Nancy. My new goal, my next goal.
That's what she's asking. Yeah.
I actually have goals, and this is something that Susan laughs at me about, but my goals actually fit on a Post-it note, like literally the size of a Post-it note. I do want to write at least one more book. I do want to do a TEDx talk. And I have a couple of other things that I'm thinking about, but not quite ready to put out into the world.
Yes, that was something. I remember being on a call with Ruth, and we were just talking about things. And Ruth goes, "Oh, what do I want to do?" And she takes out that little piece of paper. I have lists, I have books, I have things every place of all the things I want to do. And it's like, no, just very clear. And it was like, wow. And it was so simple. And I'm watching her do each one she's checking off. So that is great. Okay. And so now, why don't we, Janice? Do you want to ask your question of Ruth now?
Please, thank you. So I'm curious, on the flip side, is there a negative to being a high achiever?
Yeah, there certainly is.
And Ruth talks about that in the book too.
That's right. I think it's chapter 3.
I finished the whole book.
You did it in one sitting, didn't you?
One sitting. High achiever.
High achiever.
There was no way I was not finishing the book before it's speaking to you.
It can get really lonely. It could get really frustrating because what happens is that you have this bar of excellence for yourself. And when other people don't try to meet or exceed that bar, it gets really, really frustrating. And sometimes you feel that everyone around you is not trying or not trying their best. Because you want to do more. And what happens is then you start doing their work because they didn't do it the way you want it done. Sometimes you're a high achiever and people need you all the time. So going away spontaneously, not that we can go anywhere now, is really not so easy to do. But the worst part for a high achiever, I think, is group projects. I think group projects, everyone hates group projects, especially high achievers. Because imagine if you have this bar for yourself of what's acceptable and what you want to reach, but everyone else has a very, very different bar. Do you know how frustrating that is? And then what you don't want to do is actually, if on these group projects, is give everyone the same bonus if there's certain people who are carrying the weight. That's a great way to lose high achievers.
So what do you do to keep a high achiever motivated?
That's also in the book. So there's a lot of things that you
softballs.
There's a lot of things that you can do. So, I really talked about whenever we have an organization and we have these performance appraisals that we give, we're always aiming for average, which I think is crazy, right? If you meet average, if you're at baseline, everybody leaves you alone. If you're above baseline, fabulous. Everybody leaves you alone. If you're below the baseline, well, that's when things happen. That's when things start moving. You get a corrective action plan. There are milestones you need to hit. Someone's checking with you to make sure you hit those milestones. They send you to courses and workshops to get you to have more skills. The low achievers are getting all of the attention. What if we gave that same attention to the high achievers? Say, Janice, what skill do you want to learn? What skill do you think will make you better? I'm going to send you to whatever course or workshop you feel you need in order to be able to do that. Don't hold them to these strict times that you have to come in at 9 and leave at 5. That doesn't work. They'll get the job done. Don't worry about them. And definitely don't micromanage high achievers. Give them some sort of structure within to work that you want them to work in, and then set them free. And trust me, that's a great way to retain those high achievers, and not just retain those high achievers and motivate those high achievers. Who do you think their friends are? Other high achievers. Like attracts like. So they're going to start bringing in their friends to the organization. Now, instead of having these low achievers, you now have this big, powerful, impactful group of high achievers. Now, what happens if you don't give those people the attention and don't keep them motivated? They're going to leave. And at best, the organization is going to be left with average employees. At worst, below average employees. So there's actually a business case for giving the high achievers and high potential more attention.
So important, so important. And that is all in the book. And it was just really important points. Bruce, you're up.
So I should add that today is National Beer Can Appreciation Day. It's also National Compliment Day, and it's also National Peanut Butter Day.
Oh, Lord.
But I feel of all those, it's actually better to be National Dr. Ruth Gotian Day. And the reason for that is several. One is, of course, we very much enjoy your show every week because you have this great talent of bringing together very cool people and having great discussions. And of course, there's the book. But one of the things I've noticed is you have this talent and ability of really taking, looking at a person's situation or any type of situation and really diving down to the heart of it real quickly and figuring out like what's what. It's almost like this GPS system, this compass where you say, okay, I know what's going on. You can figure out what's going on. And then on top of that, you can take that and you can make it very accessible to people. And I'm not just talking about, the book's great, but also the way you talk every week in the show. And also, I'll be first in line if you do a TED Talk, because I think you really should do one. But you just have this talent to do that. Have you always had that, or like how have you developed that and really been able to see what's going on in the situation? Because I think that could really help a lot of people, because you really have that talent to do that.
I don't know, Bruce. I don't know. Have I always been able to do it? I think so. Just, how sometimes you can just see things and other people can't see things? Well, this is what I'm able to see and figure out. And I don't know, I've always been a talker, so I always know how to talk to people. And the older I got, the better I got at listening to people, which I think is way more important. So I think that was part of it. But in terms of parts of the other things you were saying, I would always get frustrated when people would say, you need to do this, you need to do that, without any direction on how to do it. And that's really what I wanted to focus, was not just what you need to do, but how you need to do it. And I'm an adult educator. This is what I do. This is what I've been trained to do. This is what I love to do. And now that I'm thinking of it, I think I was always in those roles that demanded that. But to me, it was something that I enjoy doing. It was part of that intrinsic motivation, right? What comes naturally to you? What do you enjoy doing? The things that I enjoy doing, I know people like Janice wouldn't. And the things that Janice is really, really good at, I don't have much interest in, right? So you need to know where your passions lie and then go for it full steam ahead.
And that's a great question, because, as Bruce was talking about those traits, Ruth, you really can see that in your work. Right? That's exactly what you did. You studied high achievers and you pulled out, in doing the research, what the commonalities were. You were able to look at patterns and make connections. And that's what I'm hearing Bruce talk about, your ability to really look at things, narrow in, see what's important, and then pull it out. And the other thing, we are talking about the book, and I'm not getting any profit on selling these books, but I really have to say that I was actually surprised at how instructional it was. I mean, I read what Ruth writes in all of her articles, and we've talked about stuff, but I didn't realize how instructional the book was going to be. And yes, she's an educator. And what's so fascinating and I love the layout of the book too. And you will really, I was very impressed because it talks about the high achievers, some of the things that really make them high achievers, some of the factors that Ruth has found. But then she also takes it and gives lessons and teachings on how to do it for yourself. It's really laid out beautifully. I really, it was very impressive.
Thank you.
So, yeah, you can.
That's actually something I really insisted on because people know every week I usually have all sorts of books behind me. I love reading, but I would get really frustrated with some of these books that give you just anecdotal experiences as a universal truth. And many of the academic articles would tell you about certain parallels between people, but wouldn't give you any practical guidance as to how to implement it. So I really wanted to bridge the two together. And the reason I did the research across different industries was I wanted to see if there was the pattern. Once I figured out the pattern, I needed to create that blueprint and really teach people. But one of the things that I wanted to do was give people a buffet of options. Because Susan, what works for you is not going to work for me.
Right.
And what works for me today is not going to work for me the next time I have a transition in my life, a new job, a move, a pandemic. So we need to have options. And one of the things we know, and this goes way back to one of the adult learning theorists, Malcolm Knowles' work, is that adults like options. We like to be able to choose. We don't like to be told what to do. So I needed to offer a lot of options. And that's why I wrote in the book, this is something that you can keep on your nightstand, because if something's not working for you, if you're in a rut, you could just pick it up, turn to that section and find some other options that you could choose from and try out. So it was really important to me that look, if I got that Radar Award about bridging theory to practice, I had to live it.
Well, it's so interesting because what I see happens a lot of times, and it's a very common thing we see now. A book is published, but then afterwards, it's the workbook that gets published afterwards. And what I'm just realizing is your book actually has the workbook already in it.
Yeah.
That's what I've just realized, that it's not just the book, it's also the workbook too.
That's
and
right.
Really a beautiful layout. I'm just, really great.
You know what's different about this book compared to other books out there is this is you're transmitting the science of success, because you did everything in a scientific fashion too. Like you said, not just anecdotes, but you really actually studied to see what people are doing and where it applies and things like that. And that's always dear to my heart, where people are actually using science to come up with lessons and innovations and things like that. So I think it really makes it stand out.
Bruce, coming from you, that means a lot. Thank you.
So now I'm just reading a question by Scott Grant. Scott asks, many of the examples seem to apply to business or professional endeavors. Are there any lessons you think apply to interpersonal relationships, like between spouses or parent-child, and be a high achiever in these areas? That's a great question. I have an answer for that, but I'm going to let Ruth answer it first and then give my opinion.
The one thing I learned is that you can't pretend to be an expert in something that you are an expert in. I have one husband and I have 3 children, and that's my entire experience with spouses and children. So I don't want to, and I haven't been trained in that. So I never wanted to say that you can use that, because that's just not my expertise. So with that, I defer to people who are experts in that field. And Susan, aren't you that expert?
Well, I won't say expert, but I'm very, because, we talk about what does expert really mean. But yes, that I've been doing that for over 35 years now. So, but what's interesting is, well, we can have follow-up discussions on how to apply. It's not in the book in terms of how to apply it, but there's a couple of skills that are used in what Ruth lays out in her book that is so important to use in relationships. So we can address that for you, Scott, in a later conversation, because that would be really interesting, I think, Ruth, a follow-up discussion on how to apply what you've talked about in terms of relationships.
We're going to do that on your show next,
Okay,
Susan.
we'll do it on my show next. That is great.
The other option is you can have about 100 spouses.
No, I like the one I have.
Good answer. So we have a little bit more time, and then I have a question I'm going to save for the end. There are some comments, and I think that those were. I want to see if there's any more questions coming in from the audience, and do any of our panelists have any last questions for this evening for Ruth about her book, her journey?
I do.
Great,
What
Susan.
what did you learn about yourself through this process?
This process taught me that I need to be okay with asking people for help. To reach a lot of these people, I really needed help. Writing is also an extremely isolating process. And it helped me get through the mourning process from my father. But sometimes it could be so isolating and you can get so stuck. And during those times, there's this Saturday night group that we're all a part of. And I would make sure that I am on those Saturday nights, because sometimes I would just listen, but it gave me the boost and the charge that I needed. And the next day was a good writing day again. So know that not every day could be great. I had a word count that I tried to get every single weekend, because I wrote this book on weekends because I have a full-time job. And some days were better than others. So I learned that I have to give myself an extra weekend grace in order to meet my deadlines and not lose my sanity.
Great question. Anyone else before I ask a final question? And then everyone's going to learn how you can reach out to the panelists and ask Ruth some more questions. Any last questions? I'm looking. Okay. And I don't see. Great,
Ruth.
Debbie.
It's our radar winner.
Ruth, thank you. And you're my mentor. It wouldn't have happened without you, my mentor. You know, I was able to pre-order this book on Amazon, but where else can a person get it? Is it local at bookstores, anywhere else?
Yeah, we were going to get to that at the end, but go for it now. Go.
It is
Right.
everywhere you love buying books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, independent booksellers, wherever you love buying books. A lot of the bookstores already have it. If not, just ask them and they'll order it. Or you can just go to my website, ruthgotian.com/book, and it'll tell you where all over the world you can actually get the book.
And it did come out in another, where did it come out in England first? There was someplace else actually good.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
came out in Europe earlier this month and on Kindle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people have read it and left reviews.
Great. Yes, and we'll talk a bit about that. Okay, so one final question that I have, and then we'll see what else you want to impart in terms of what you want the audience to know. But when people read this book, what would they be surprised to learn about you after reading the book? Because you do reveal some stuff about yourself. You reveal things every week. But what is something that people would be really surprised to learn about you?
I don't know. I sort of put it all out there.
Oh no, you didn't put it all out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was your favorite story of what I have?
I want to know what people would be surprised at. So you know what? You think about that, and
I need to think about that. I'm not sure
about that. Maybe somebody else will know. But before we go, what is a takeaway? If you could have one takeaway that's really near and dear to your heart in this entire book, if people could take away one thing and go, wow, I got this out of it, what would it be?
I'm going to say two things. Same two things I said earlier. Do something important, not just interesting. That's the first one. And the second one is fear not trying more than you fear failing.
Yeah. Fear not trying more than you fear failing.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one because that's what, when we're at the end of our lives, it's that question of what do you regret not doing, right? And that will do it. So did you think of anything that people would be surprised to learn? Oh, okay. Well, you did talk about it. What sport did you play?
I did lots of sports, but the soccer one is the one that probably gets the most limelight. I played competitive soccer, left fullback for many, many years, quite competitively, but that almost didn't happen because I was told I couldn't play.
And so how did it happen?
Well, I was 10 years old, and the recess was broken down by gender. So the girls traded stickers and the boys played soccer. And I was not interested in sitting and trading stickers with googly eyes. I wanted to go and kick a ball. But my teacher said, girls don't play soccer. Because remember, we didn't see that on television. You didn't see it anywhere. And that just did not sound right to me at all. So that Friday, I went to the New York Public Library, took out every book they had with a picture of a girl playing soccer. This is why representation matters. I brought that 2 or 3 foot high pile of books, put it on my teacher's desk, and asked to reopen that discussion about girls being unable to play soccer. And he had no choice but to let me play. The only place I could play was with the boys' team. That made me really, really good. So got to play for a long time. I haven't laced up my cleats, though, in a very long time.
What a great story. That just really says so much about who you are and what you do. You were that high achiever then. You had the skills. You just discovered it later, but that was it. I think that was just a brilliant story that really captures everything about you and about your research. So I think we're just about out of time. And I want to say again, before we go, a big congratulations and a thank you to the Mentor Project for hosting this every week. I want to give again a congratulations to Debbie for getting this unbelievable recognition and award. I want to also give a shout out to the tech person behind the scenes tonight, Samantha Stone. She's been doing the tech work while Deb was on camera, so thank you. And I see a message. Jax is saying, "Oh, Bruce Wiley and his fun backgrounds. Love seeing all of your beautiful faces." And I also want to just thank each and every one of the people, the panelists that are on tonight. And Ruth, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to host your show this evening and putting you on the hot seat. So how was it? I know you were really nervous. Was it like, do you feel better now? Like, was it not that bad? Was it okay?
I don't know. I'm prepping. I'm not usually good at being the one answering questions. I'm usually
You were great. But now you know how it feels to be asked the questions.
I do. And you know what's happening on Thursday? This is actually hysterical and people can join. Columbia University is bringing back my dissertation committee for a book talk. And last time I was with my dissertation committee, I thought I was going to pass out because that was the doctoral defense. So I'm hoping this time it goes a little bit smoother and less anxiety producing.
Well, I hope I made you feel comfortable this evening.
You certainly did.
I know the panelists did because they all had great questions. And I want to thank everybody. And where can people find you? Where can they find information about this event that's happening on Thursday? And maybe we can put it in the chat, the information where people can find everyone if they're interested in I know everyone's going to be interested in getting the book. So why don't you just repeat where everybody can find the book and get in touch with you, and then we'll go around and each of the panelists can say where people can reach them.
So the book can be found wherever you love buying books, or just go to my website and you will find it there, ruthgotian.com/book. And I put the Columbia University event. Samantha could put it in the chat for anybody who wants to sign up. It's actually open to the public.
And for if people want to get in touch with any of the people, the other panelists, you can, I think we're going to also put it up, and you can also go to mentorproject.com. I'm sorry, mentorproject.org. Yes, Debbie, it's .org. Yes, mentorproject.org. You can also find the Mentor Project on LinkedIn and Facebook, and all of the people, all the panelists are on there, as well as you can look them up by Googling them. And again, I just want to thank everybody so much. And this has been great. And Ruth, congratulations. And I think, I was thinking people need to start, maybe you want to do this, and we'll talk more about it. This is a great book for a book club to go through because the exercises are all there. So we're going to stay tuned for more information about book clubs around this book. So we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Ruth will be back in the host chair. And thank you again, and have a great week. And I know you'll.
We have next week. Let me just get my calendar open. We have somebody who's in the book next week. We have two-time NBA champion Zaza Pachulia joining us next week.
Great. So thank you for watching tonight. Enjoy the book, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.